If we did not have the Ten Commandments, this 13th chapter of Hebrews would go a pretty good ways as to how to live. Check out the first verse. Let mutual love continue. Let mutual love continue. Babs and my friend, P, I won't give away her name, but I'll say P, and her husband is J. So you could call him PJ. But anyway, P was recently, we called her this last couple days, and she was at an anniversary for some, I think it was family members, 65th anniversary. But as I heard her talk about it, it seems like it was almost ironic, because she said all they do is bicker and fuss. Can you imagine 65 years? Okay, I'm not going there. And she was sad for them, because here they were celebrating, should be a pinnacle moment in their lives. 65th year, we're 20 years behind them. And it was not great. You see, a couple weeks ago we went to the funeral of Jay, her husband. And P had a big part in it, putting it together. And the interesting thing is, both P and J had been married earlier with a first marriage, but it did not go well. And they were married for 40 years. P and J were married 40 years. And she said, as she thought about this couple with their fussing and all that, she said, oh, I would give anything for another 25 years with Jay. The other amazing thing about this is she was the quintessential caregiver, because you see, Jay had Parkinson's for years, and it kept diminishing, the last year especially. The last year especially when we saw him, because he also had dementia with it. And I saw this fellow pastor who I'd played music together with and done all sorts of stuff, and quirky and funny and alive, continued to diminish. And she supported him through these years and made sure every 15 minutes or so it was regulated when he was going to get a particular medication, and it made a difference. And she kept him at home until like the last month. Let mutual love continue. Mutual love means trust and sharing and hope. And to wake up with that trust and sharing and hope every single day, that is letting mutual love continue. Now, beware. There are some who call themselves in the name of Christ who this verse makes absolutely no sense to them at all. They can't understand it. Because you see, they view all relationships as transactional. What can I get out of the other person? Not love, but what can I get from them? And that's the way they think. They have no capacity. They really have no capacity, depending on the severity of narcissism, to actually love, to truly love. And no matter what you may expect from this person, you have to understand that if you're dealing with a true narcissist, they will never begin to truly love or care for you or anybody else. They can't. It's just not in them. But you have been baptized into Christ. You have been given the Holy Spirit. And every time you lift up a prayer, you allow that spirit of love to touch and renew and strengthen, and you would call you forth into relationships, not just married relationships, though that's a good one, but all other relationships too, to bring forth that mutual love and care. If I talked with P today, I know I could refer to this Tennyson quote saying, "It is better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all." Verse 2, "Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some have entertained angels without knowing it." You remember the story about Abraham. He had these visitors come, and he said, well, let's get some bread together, get some water to drink, whatever, and he entertained them. And you see, it was very critical because they were on their way to Sodom and Gomorrah, and he gets into that comical text that we had not long ago, where Abraham does a deal with God. So God, what'd you say? If I could find 50 righteous people, would you save the place? Then he gets down to 5. That moment where you're giving hospitality can be so crucial. I was touched years ago to hear the story from my mother-in-law. She grew up and still came from a place in Switzerland near Zurich. And during World War II, they would have kids come to their farm, and they would fatten them up, is the way Babs tells me, because they were from other parts of Europe, right in the middle of World War II. Can you imagine what those kids saw? And for a few months, they would rotate various kids, and they would come and stay with them at their farm, and they would eat well, and they would know what peace is, and maybe even know what love is, right in the middle of chaos and death and the vicious nature of war. The neat thing is that story goes forth because relationship continued. There were letters exchanged after the war with some of those, quote, kids that are now 80-some years beyond that, probably in their 90s. And they continued a relationship over the time. In fact, it wasn't long ago that they tried to get a hold of my mother-in-law, somebody from that time. Can you imagine what that hospitality meant to those kids, that they would continue to write back or call or visit with somebody that took time and food to care for them? Hospitality matters. It's still going on today. Not that place, but another. In Poland, you've heard about stories where Ukrainians can come there and be renewed and have a place to stay. The LIRS, now called Lutheran Refuge, formerly Lutheran Integration and Refugee Service, so they call it Global Refuge now, easier to say. They are reaching out to people, and particularly here in the States, people from Afghanistan, some of which helped our troops, and people from Ukraine, to help people. And after all, that's where that organization came from. They started it after World War II, and all those people were left without a country. It goes on, Lutheran Disaster Relief reached out to people in 50 countries, over 50 countries in the world, and people in 37 of our states here in the U.S. They're doing phenomenal work. That hospitality still is going on. Not just Lutherans, but others too. The sad thing is, some of themselves who call themselves Christian nationalists, they came out a little while ago and said, empathy is a sin. Yeah, Christian nationalists came out and said empathy is a sin. So they have no way of understanding this text whatsoever, because hospitality and mutual love is actually what is called for. Verse 13:3. Remember those who are in prison as though you were in prison with them, those who are tortured as though you were being tortured. I know there's often more to the story. On the police side, on the neighborhood side, on the criminal side. I know partially because we have a daughter that was a cop, but it's also from stories that I've heard and seen. I have it burned into my mind an image, I don't remember his name, but one of my people in Long Beach, California, this is at the very north end of Long Beach, up near Paramount and Compton, and I was with him that day, a white guy, and he got busted for heroin possession. And I remember him being tossed down next to one of those metal trash containers. His cheek flashed up against the pavement, hands behind in handcuffs, and snot running out of his nose. I'm not saying he's innocent. He was probably guilty. But he's still somebody. Verse 4, let marriage be held in honor. Let the marriage bed be kept undefiled, for God will judge fornicators and adulterers. We kind of covered marriage, so I'm not going to go further into that. We're going to go into 5a and b. It goes like this. Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have. That's such a fantastic text. Free from the love of money, not from money itself, but from the love of it, your dedication to it. And, well, the contrast to that is from Wall Street, the 1987 movie, Oliver Stone. And Gordon Gekko is famous, actually Michael Douglas, speaking in the character of Gordon Gekko, says, greed, for lack of a better word, is good. And it really lays it out there on the line, doesn't it? In another movie, and I would expand the greed not just for money, but also for power. If you go back to Raiders of the Lost Ark, Last Crusade, they're at the closing moments, they've found the Holy Grail. The place is coming apart. There's an earthquake going on. There's an incredible gaps of hell down below them. And this beautiful but very treacherous, who turns out to be a Nazi scholar, is right with Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones, of course. And he reaches for her because she's already down one ledge and she's about to fall into it. And he grabs one hand. But with the other hand, she's grabbing for the Grail. That famous grail that Jesus would have touched. And she lets go of Indiana Jones' hand, pursuing the wealth and power of the grail, and falls to her death. It's a beautiful text. Be content with what you have. Well, we don't have time enough to go through the rest of Hebrews 13. But I want to skip over, right to the end of 5, and I will leave you, and I will never leave you nor forsake you. It's a promise. It's a lovely promise, and it is true. And I'm almost tempted to break out into Carole King's You Got a Friend, the Jesus version, but I'm going to spare you. Shalom.